This is Chapter 7, Blindsided, Part 2. Mango and her friend Izzy are entering the auditorium for Izzy to audition for the school show Yo Romeo. As we entered the auditorium, Brace's Chloe was on stage singing. We didn't give her that name to make fun of her. Everyone called her that because there were 7 other girls named Chloe in the 7th grade. There was Brace's Chloe, Biracial Chloe, Hipster Chloe, Basketball Chloe, Chloe C, Chloe H, and Boss Chloe, who got that name because she was the stage manager and leader of the audiovisual squad, the group of kids in charge of everything technical that went on in the auditorium. She was also the coolest Chloe of them all because she dyed her hair blue and only wore blue clothes and had blue eyes. I guess we should have called her Blue Chloe. But she'd only been totally blue for a few months, too soon for a name change. Brace's Chloe wasn't half bad. Her voice had a nice jazzy quality. The room was buzzing with energy and excitement, but everyone was focused on Brace's Chloe. The seats were about a quarter filled with drama nerds, most of whom seemed to be rooting for each other. The auditorium was huge, with about 500 seats and a real stage with lights and everything. Izzy grabbed my hand and hurried down the center aisle to the first row. "Sit here, I'll be right back." She dropped her backpack in the seat next to me and hurried to sign in with Boss Chloe. I thought about thinking up an excuse to leave, but I was here for Izzy and didn't have anything to worry about since I wasn't auditioning. So I decided to sit back and be the best moral supporter that I could be. My eyes were on stage watching Brace's Chloe end her song real jazzy-like when Izzy came back to our seats. As the room broke out into applause, Izzy leaned in and said into my ear, "What's she doing here?" "Who?" Izzy nodded in the direction of Boss Chloe. And who was signing up on the clipboard but Brooklyn? That was totally stray. The girl sings like a crow with a broken wing and strep throat. Why would she be signing up to audition for a musical? Not to mention she had got practice after school 4 days a week. As she handed the clipboard back to Boss Chloe, Brooklyn actually looked at me, smiled shyly, wiggled her fingers, and walked up the aisle. That was actually bizarre, I said as I joined in the applause for Brace's Chloe. A part of me wanted to turn to Brooklyn and return her smile and wave. Maybe she wasn't so mad anymore. She probably realized she had lucked out with a $450 phone that Dada had bought for her. We might be on the path of being friends again after all. Stranger things have happened. While a boy I didn't know was rapping or singing or performing some kind of mashup of both, I was preoccupied, imagining scenarios where Brooklyn and I would make up and become friends again. I grinned at the thought of her going to Ms. Lipschultz's office, begging and pleading for her to let me back on the Girls on Track team. Ms. Lipschultz's eyeballs would thaw. She'd say yes, and Brooklyn and I would go on to set a national record at the annual GOT 5K. Mom would write an article about us for the local newspaper, and the caption under our picture would read, "Fast Friends." I snapped out of my reverie when Boss Chloe called Izzy to the stage. Izzy leapt up from her seat before I could offer any moral support, ran to Mr. Ramsey at the piano with her sheet music. The piano started to vamp, and Izzy shimmied down to the front of the stage. She had a loud, deep, big voice and more confidence than KFC had chickens. Izzy sounded great, and her acting and moves had all the kids in the room laughing and applauding even before she was finished. I must admit, it felt good to be hanging around with the biggest star in the room. And Izzy was obviously right about crying before singing because she sounded incredible. A bunch of kids stood and cheered when she finished. I got up and joined them. She deserved a standing ovation. Before we could sit down, Boss Chloe called out, "Mango Delight Fuller, you're up next." I was so busy congratulating Izzy that I really wasn't paying attention, even though part of my brain knew Boss Chloe had called my name. She called again, Mango, you're up, take the stage. I was dumbfounded. But, Boss Chloe pointed to her clipboard and snapped, You're next, come on. Panic stricken, with the mango pit in my stomach growing at warp speed, I looked to Izzy. Did you? Izzy, her eyes popping out of her doll face, shook her head. Everyone in the auditorium had their eyes on me as I looked around the room. Then I spotted them in the back row, Brooklyn and Hateful Joe, their heads together, giggling. My teacher, Bob, stood and said, Mango, great to see you here. Come on. Everyone shied the first time, but we're good people. Go on up and do your best. The biggest part of me wanted to run straight into the girls' bathroom and hide in the stall, but I knew that's just what my two enemies wanted. Yes, that's right, enemies. I knew it now, once and for all. Brooklyn was my sworn enemy. I wouldn't waste my imagination fantasizing about us ever being friends again. She did this on purpose to humiliate me, but I wasn't about to let her queen of mean plan come true. Every personality trait has a good side and a not so good side. Yes, I was stubborn like my mom, but sometimes being a mule-like has its advantages. I raised an eyebrow at Brooklyn that said, You shouldn't test me, kid, and then strode onto the stage like I owned it. At the piano, Mr. Ramsey smiled, and that's when I realized I had no sheet music. Sweat began to form on my brow. I walked up to him and said, I have no sheet music. He said, That's all right, you can sing a cappella. I shrugged, but I don't know that song. Everyone watching burst out laughing, except Izzy. She dropped her face in her hands and sank down in her seat. Mr. Ramsey corrected me. A cappella is not a song. It means singing without music. I said, Oh, that's good since I don't have any music. More laughter. I felt as though I would just spontaneously combust right there on stage, leaving only a pile of embarrassed ashes. Mr. Ramsey said quietly, What song do you know the words to? The only song I could think of right at that second was Halo by Beyonce. I told him, and he said, A Beyonce song? That's kind of rangy, pretty difficult for most singers. I didn't think it was so hard. I mean, I'd sung it 100 times in my bathroom. And of course, Mom and I had watched the concert DVD a million times. I looked over at Mr. Ramsey and I said, That's what I'd like to sing. He nodded and said, Okay, I can probably fake it and play along with some chords. What key? Key? I didn't want to make a fool of myself again, so I thought for a minute just to make sure he wasn't asking me about my house keys. And I said, The Beyonce key? His eyebrows rose to meet his headline, but he shrugged and began playing a few opening chords. I turned toward the kids in the seats. I noticed that Brooklyn and Hateful Joe, the queens of mean, were holding up their cell phones to video record me. I closed my eyes to block them out. I was not going to let them win. Halo was a song about love and feeling love all around you, and that's what I willed myself to feel. I was too stubborn to let those mean girls make a fool of me. Marjorie Fuller's daughter was nobody's punk. I closed my eyes and imagined myself back in the bathroom, and then pictured it transforming into a stadium like I always did. 1 million people raised their lighted cell phones and swayed along with me. I was lifted by the chords from the piano, the lyrics I was about to sing, and the queen bee in me. I started to sing. I lifted my hand like I was holding my hairbrush microphone. My body began to sway to the music. The shyness I felt about singing in public fell away completely, and I just let the music and lyrics take me over. Suddenly, I was brave enough to reach for the highest notes and hit them with ease. Something inside of me must have been waiting for this moment all my life, because I sang a few runs that I'd never even tried before. My voice felt stronger than it ever had, and I belted out the last note at the end and held it to the end of my breath. When I was done, I let the stadium in my mind disappear, and I was back at school. I could hear the lights above the stage buzzing. Somewhere in the hallway, a locker door slammed. My body was vibrating as though every pore on my skin was charged with electricity. Finally, I opened my eyes and looked out at the row of kids in the auditorium. That was the moment the room exploded. Kids were jumping up and down and standing on their seats. Bob, sitting in the front row with a notepad on his lap, just stared at me with a hand on his forehead as if he were checking to see if he had a fever. I was tackled by Izzy, who had rushed on stage to hug me. She had tears in her eyes, and so did Mr. Ramsey sitting at the piano. I didn't think to look and see how Brooklyn and Haley Joanne reacted. I couldn't be bothered with anything negative, not now. In this moment, the Mean Girls did not exist anymore. I had sung in front of a bunch of people for the first time in my life. Good, great, fantastic, amazing. All those words were too small to describe the feeling running through my mind and body. I was feeling something I had never felt before. A feeling I think I could call absolute triumph.